Welcome. These will be my thoughts on The Flash, Season 1, Episode 13, The Nuclear Man. The episode is rated TV PG, so will this video be? There will be spoilers for the Arrowverse leading up to and including this episode, but not for anything that came out after this episode first premiered, and another episode that I absolutely loved. We're going to do a couple of quick YouTube video recommendations before we get into it. Believe it or not, Why Do You Care's episode on Drew McCoy, Marty McFlone on Is the Wuthering Heights Backlash Overblown? Anthony Gramulia's Resident Evil film Attacked on Both Sides. Grifter Says Satan Owns Hollywood. Zach Milne Talks Movies. Marvel and Star Wars Thriving on Disney+. Daredevil and Mole Are So Good. Let's see. Step Back, Office Hours. And Marty McFlone's The Barbie Movie is Weird About Gender. So, right, one more thing before I get into it. I rewatched the Friday the 13th remake and The Ward, both because Daniel Panabaker has a decent-sized role in, And they actually, I've forgotten. I mean, I think this show deserves her talent more than those do. She does what she can with it, and I had totally forgotten how, in Friday the 13th, she uses the, kind of girl next door charm that comes naturally to her, that they do also use some here. The character just isn't, an actual genius, but in both, the character is very, she has empathy. In The Ward, she's kind of playing a mean girl, and I had totally forgotten how good a job she does at that. Like, she's very convincing. That's not really what I'm used to seeing her play. She certainly doesn't on this show so far. But, yeah, quite impressive. Neither of those movies are all that good, but, as I've said before, any Friday the 13th movie I can sit down and watch, which, I can't say the same for every Nightmare on Elm Street movie, not for the 6th and the remake. Anyway, yeah, it's so freaking good to be back to Arrowverse. Yes, so I think we're gonna start with the deleted scenes and then get into the episode. Eventually I will get into the actual episode, but yeah, the deleted scenes, good stuff, pretty much just cut for time. The in there we actually do see Barry stop the robbery where he says no old lady. He also saves a dog that is running away from their person. It's, right before the kiss after the successful first date. And there's also, we see them decide that they're going to bring, Clarissa to Firestorm. But yeah, it's one of those things where the fact that they will have all this dialogue on a show like this where they reiterate things means that we don't need to see them make the decision to bring, yeah. And with that, let's get into the episode. I'm going to try to keep it chronological. But yeah, I really hope that they work out or at least stay together for a while because they are so cute together. Yeah, the thing about, the spiciest tacos in the city and, the Spice Champion, it's just, yeah, absolutely wonderful. And I think the next part is the yeah, and honestly, as soon as Mr. Ramon said, when you read the paper tomorrow, little old lady, I literally out loud said, Cisco! That's Yeah. And it turns out there wasn't even a little old lady, but, it is, yeah. One of the aspects of Flash is if it's something he could do quickly, then he can indeed do it without the other person realizing he was even gone. And yeah, once again, really appreciate the, consent. Nonverbal consent is still consent. She leans in for a kiss, but he is the one who closes the distance rather than either of them just kissing without clear consent from the other. And the the thing about, she kisses is like, what was that about? I wanted to see if I wanted a second date. And then she kisses again. What was that about? I wanted to make sure. That is a remarkably successful first date. So that's, yeah. And I think the next part is when they, let's see. Yeah, we have the part where Stein went to Firestorm went to talk to one of Martin's old friends, and the or classmate at least, and there was clearly trust. And yeah, he graduates to being someone that Team Flash feel they have to stop. And I really appreciate, that happened very early in the episode. So we spend the episode trying to figure out, can they do this? Should they do this? Just, yeah. And I think the next thing might be the second. Well, let's see. Yeah. So yeah, we have the they talk about they decide on a stakeout. Right, and before that, there's the they talk to, yeah, when it comes to, some more background on Dr. Stein. Thankfully, Clarissa explains it all. And yeah, the second date moves fast, which I appreciate. They PG'd it as much as they could. I mean, we all know what they're talking about. If you're not PG age, if you're not too young to know. But yeah, I'm trying to keep this video PG. The let's see. Yeah, and so they. That also, I will say, that does sound like a really great second date that Barry planned. But yeah, unfortunately, Firestorm shows up and he has to leave, and it was pretty funny, all the mentions of, so it's really important. It's not more important than you, obviously. You're important to me, but just, yeah. And the let's see. Yeah, I really appreciated, yeah, come to think of it, throughout this entire episode, Barry isn't fighting people who have, there's another metahuman in this episode, but they're not really fighting. They're, yeah, like, basically Firestorm tries to get rid of Barry, but, I mean, he could literally set him on fire, or, he could harm him significantly, and all he does is fly off, and, Barry, yeah, the let's see, but yeah, it was very clever. I didn't realize he was putting on a tracker, but that was very clever, quick thinking, as Wells says, I think, in one of the deleted scenes. I don't think it made it into the episode. And that was also a thing, in the actual episode, there's just the line about the tracker Barry put on, so yeah, we don't need Wells saying, good job, you put a tracker on. That was quick thinking. Later, when it's like, oh yeah, Barry, we all know about the tracker Barry put out, because, like, we saw them, he was definitely close enough to put the tracker on, but yeah, as soon as there was takeoff, I was like, I mean, Barry's strengths is really when he can touch. It doesn't have to be the ground; it can be a building. But when he's like up in the air like that, that's really going to limit what he can do. And that is what Firestorm is counting on. He doesn't want to have to hurt him more than necessary. The couple of flashbacks were quite good. It's really great seeing. This is the most screen time Victor Garber has had on the show so far, and yeah, there were a couple of parts where he definitely reminded me of some of the, probably especially the comic relief bits they would sometimes do with him on Alias. And let's see, what's the other thing? Clarissa meeting, yeah, Firestorm, Martin in Ronnie's body was also, yeah, and I think that does bring us to, yeah, so we also have I liked Joe's comment about, Dope change into another outfit. Good music, great music choice as well for preparing for the date. And that brings us to, Joe talks to Ramon about the, yeah, so they go to the house where, Barry's mom was murdered. I didn't love this thing of like, so, we have this divorcee who is like just a walking stereotype of that kind of person. That just felt like, what are you doing? But it wasn't like a huge problem. I was worried that they were going to take it further than they did. Now, I think that pretty much does bring us to, yeah. So they find blood, they test, and right. Also, it was really cool seeing they got those pictures, which love this mix of like, because at least some of what they say, let's say that this is something about nitrate. I could imagine nitrate was used in mirrors a while back. I believe it is accurate. It's certainly something similar to that stores images, and then this idea of like, oh, let's turn them 3D. Like, okay, and let's see, yeah. So they test the blood. At first, Cisco says no, and then he does indeed do it, and there was no match for Wells, which is interesting, but there was for Barry, and it had to be adult Barry. So yeah, once again, it's sounding a lot like what I know of the comic story that this appears to be taking at least that element from. So yeah, they're continuing to do a really great job, just gradually, you know, getting to that. Yeah, and I think that does pretty much. Let's see. Yeah, genuinely moving when Clarissa and Firestorm talk, and yeah, they manage to, they give him some drugs, and it works, which I also really appreciate. It is really important to help strengthen trust in. Okay, I need to word this very carefully to be sure. So, obviously, there are definitely major issues with the pharmaceutical industry. They do overprescribe because capitalism will has the capacity to ruin anything good. But at the same time, there are definitely people who genuinely just need the right medication, including people who struggle with one or more mental health problems. And yeah, it's really great to see, because like by the end of this episode, there hasn't been like, they didn't do that thing. There's sometimes a trope in like Hollywood stuff where it's like, oh no, the drugs made it worse. And listen, once again, I appreciate sometimes that happens, but there's so much media like that, and there's way too little that empathizes with people with mental health conditions and acknowledges that sometimes medication can be life-changing, life-saving. And I'm not just talking about, I'm not only talking about the ones that where it is a physical ailment that is cured. Anyway, yeah, when they talk about, well, he could go nuclear. I will say it did feel a little bit weird that he said, you're arguing really loudly. Were they? I feel like the line should have just been, do you not realize how thin these walls are? Because that it feels like, I don't know. I mean, we saw it. They really weren't being that loud. Which I think it would have felt like melodramatic, soap opera-y soap opera in a different way, I suppose. But yeah, it's the trolley problem, two people that they care about and know, or millions of people, many of whom they don't know, but human life has intrinsic values. Really very nicely done. And then he leaves, and at first it's like, oh no, what, and then we realize, oh right, minimum safe distance, very clever. And yeah, really appreciate a couple of points about scientists. The thing about a lot of them don't appreciate the value of aesthetics, but also we have the thing about like, well, as a scientist, he knows minimum safe distance, and he's willing to self-sacrifice. And I think, right, I wanted to briefly note, so yeah, after the second date, they, yeah, he tries to make things right, and it was good about the thing about, well, they were up 2 goals, and then they blew it. We're not talking about hockey anymore, are we? And let's see, yeah, so she talks to Iris, and I think they did a good job straddling this balance, because like, yeah, you could read Iris as trying to sabotage it, but at the same time, it is also this thing of, I do think at least part of her does want Barry to be happy, and obviously, at least right now, it's not going to end up being Barry and Iris together, but she would rather he be happy with someone else than he just be alone and lonely. Yeah, I think they did quite a good job, especially because she does get to explain herself. I think it would have been very frustrating if Barry just told her, I can't believe you did this, and then left. But they have a conversation, and she's like, no, I thought this would help. Should I go talk to her? What? Yeah. She realizes that she may have made a mistake, and she's trying to fix it. And I think that might just about cover the yeah, and so he he shows up to Linda's workplace again, and I think they got the this is something where they have to get it right, because, and I think they did. Basically, we don't want this kind of like, okay, I know some people find it romantic, but a lot do not. This kind of, I guess I'll keep it vague and just say, I know that Nicholas Sparks has put it in at least one of those stories, this thing of like the guy wanting the girl so much that he, pressures her into a date in a way that is just like, even though she's saying no. And here, like, she's not actually saying that she does not, that she, like, for sure doesn't want another date with him. She's saying she's not sure if he is sufficiently dedicated, and, she doesn't want to waste her time, basically. That's what it is. When he shows up to her work, she does not say, "Get out, I told you I don't want to talk to you." She says, "What are you doing here? I gave you an out." The words "I gave you an out" are basically like, she might as well be saying, does this mean you do want to keep dating? And yeah, the ghost pepper, and that definitely does show that he is, willing to do a lot for her. And I love that after, so he gets some milk or dairy of some kind. It's one of those things where, actually, yeah, didn't he drink water earlier? Oh wait, I think that was maybe because it wasn't quite as spicy. Because I feel like I've heard that water is not the. Actually, I think it was on Home Improvement. I have to be careful not to call it 10 Thumbs, because that's not the original title. That's just what it was translated to here in Denmark, or rather what it translates back into in English. Anyway, I really appreciate, afterwards she's like, "That ghost spider could have killed you, nerd." And let's see. Yeah, that brings us to the very end of the episode, and I'm a little bit worried, maybe also Firestorm, and yeah. So they managed, yeah, the thing about, like, yeah, Wells was genuinely considering using that pistol on Firestorm, and that is, yeah, appreciate Gideon pointing out that's rather crude. And the, yeah, the thing about, well, you could change that, but it's going to throw off your timetable. Yeah, and if it's like, I guess it was destroyed by the end of the episode, wasn't it? So that could slow down his timetable even further. But I mean, it was one thing if it worked and he just had to change it back. But anyway, the yeah, also appreciated. I guess I will also call her Dr. Snow, not wanting Firestorm to refer to her as Kate, or call her Kate to her face at least. And yeah, the kiss, that was him. I think that does. Yeah, the thing about, well, as fast as you can run, Barry, you cannot outrun a nuke. So, be careful not to be too close. Another thing about, like, will it work? We'll know in 12 minutes. And yeah, so they, it's put on, he's very put upon by the quantum thingy-majig splicer. And that is also a really cool idea, this thing of, like, maybe they could be separated. And that's the thing, like, we don't actually see what's left. We just know that there's going to be a strike team deployed, and, I don't know. I wouldn't rule out that we will see that they will have managed to separate. And because that's the thing, like, if he is a nuke, if he's a walking nuke, then he might be able to come back from the explosion. I mean, there are comic characters who can, explode and reform if that is their power, and or they have intense healing factors. Yeah, I guess that does pretty much cover. Yeah, that was also just a cool image. Flash runs, and then there's a nuke, complete with the mushroom cloud and everything. Yeah, I think that is all for this episode. yeah, looking forward to more. And right, if this is the first Arrowverse video of mine you watch, the next video I do is on Arrow rather than Flash. I'm going to do my best at least to do these episodes in the order that they originally aired. Yeah. And I do really appreciate the episode, like, grappling with, because obviously it is a complicated question, how do you stop an exploding man?